By the time Alien 3 came out, after Alien and Aliens, we kind of got a sense of what the aliens were all about. They even had a name at that point. They were called xenomorphs. And we learned about their reproductive cycle. We kind of got a sense of what made them tick. They just seemed perpetually pissed off. But we kind of knew what we were dealing with. Well, now we have A Quiet Place Day 1. It's a prequel. It's the first day that these aliens arrived. And if you go into this movie thinking, okay, they're going to tell us, kind of give us some idea what they're about, you're going to be sorely disappointed. They ain't give us no idea about these aliens. I don't know what to call them. If someone knows what they are called, if there's a name been given to them, please let me know. But A Quiet Place Day 1 does not do anything to kind of develop these creatures. But does that matter? All right, so let's get into it. The movie stars Lupita Nyong'o, Joseph Quinn, soon to be the Human Torch in the new Fantastic Four release coming out in a couple of years, I guess, and Djimon Hounsou, who has a minor role, but he gets some billing as well. I was drawn into this film right away because it does something that a lot of movies don't do anymore. It sets up things and doesn't spoon feed you. You kind of learn what's happening as the film goes. And I think if they set things up properly, it doesn't bother me that I feel like I'm like, what's happening? What's going on here? So we meet Sam in a hospice center. Clearly, she's going through something. I thought that the way Lupita played it, it just got me drawn into like, oh my God, what's going on with her? I want to know more about this character. And it's in these beginning scenes that we meet probably the biggest star of the movie. I forgot to mention the cat. The cat whose name is Frodo. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I was drawn right in because the characters all seem solid. They seem three-dimensional. And I was believing it. And I maybe that's a testament to Lupita's talent. But I was drawn into the characters. I believed them right off the bat. The setup of the first act is that Lupita and her caregiver and some of the people from this hospital are going to take a trip into Manhattan to go see a puppet theater. I really liked the cinematography, the way they shot New York. And let me just say, one of the most impressive things that I found out after seeing this movie is that I believe these scenes were not actually shot in New York. They were shot in London. And they constructed city streets to double as New York on some of the studios or some of the stages, I guess. That's the first time I can think of where they shot outside of New York and it looked convincingly like New York. So kudos to the film crew. But yeah, I love the way the colors were kind of bright and popped and very saturated when they were in New York, and it just there was a feeling of community. And I gotta commend the director, whose name I forget right now, but he did that, and it was really brilliant how that contrast after the aliens arrive. And I'm not spoiling anything, but we see the aliens arrive in the trailer through some meteorites that are hitting the Earth. There's a meteorite that hits near the theater where Lupita and crew are, and after that, the way the cinematography changed, everything was in grayish blues, dark grays, varying shades of black. Lupita is seen with ash on her face, which is just a striking image. At first, she has just half of her face in ash. I don't know what the director was trying to say there, but at another point in the film, within the first act, her entire face is covered with ash. Her face is just, and her eyes, they just, I don't know, it just was a haunting image. And there's no way, even if you're shooting in a area that's doubling for New York, like I said, they shot some of the scenes in London. It can't help but invoke images, 20 odd years later of 9/11. So that was amazing. And there's even there was a shot where they come across the wreckage of a building and there's an iron cross, which reminded me of the actual Iron Cross. There was a part of the building of the original World Trade Center that was left standing, and it was a cross configuration of metal girders. So it was just amazing the way they contrasted the colorful, everything's okay New York to the post alien invasion New York. Very striking. Once the aliens arrive, and by the way, I don't know how these aliens could survive by riding on these asteroid or meteorites or asteroids, whatever they're called. I mean, when these things hit the Earth, they look like they were exploding like bombs. So I don't know how these things managed to survive. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I can go with it. But once that happens, once they arrive, it's not like the movie turns into a creature feature or a slasher film or a scary horror film. I mean, there is horror involved. We're talking about aliens from outer space. But it still remains a very well acted, very well thought out character study of people trying to survive. The basic crux of the story is Lupita Nyong'o's character, Sam. She meets up with Joseph Quinn's character, Joseph Quinn, the guy from FF, Fantastic Four. His name is Eric. And they set out on a mission. I don't want to say what it is, but they set out on a mission that belies the fact that they should be heading to safety. They decide to do something else because it is Lupita's dream to do what she came to Manhattan to do besides go to the puppet theater. It involves something from her background, and she determines that she wants to accomplish that first and foremost, and her companion that she meets, Eric, decides to help her do so. And this is where another YouTube critic pointed out, and I couldn't believe I didn't get this, that her name is Sam. Her name is Samira, but Sam for short. Her cat's name is Frodo. So that's a whole Lord of the Rings reference. I'm a huge nerd for Lord of the Rings. I read the books twice, including The Hobbit. So I can't believe I didn't get that reference, but that's totally awesome. One thing that I was a little disappointed by was that I wanted to see more of humanity dealing with these creatures coming from another planet. So once they land, once they arrive on Earth, it's not too many scenes in where it's like the military's got it all figured out. I mean, now the military doesn't play a large presence in this. It's not like we see scores of soldiers in the streets. We don't see much of a military presence other than you see helicopters, stuff like that. There's explosions, and you hear from the helicopters orders being shouted like, please stay in shelter in place, that kind of stuff. Other than that, there's not much of a military presence. However, it just seemed like everybody got the idea of how these aliens work a little bit too easily or too soon. I wanted to see more people not knowing, oh, it's sound that attracts them, so that we could see that effect of, or the realization of what makes them tick, and we could see some carnage before they realize how these creatures operate. And that's another question I have. I'm curious, and if you know, please tell me. Do these creatures, I know they work on some type of echolocation, I guess. They can't see, so they work on sound. But do they use sound to hunt prey? Or do they not like sound and they just want to kill whatever's making the sound? And if that's the case, then what do they feed on? Why did they come to Earth? These are the questions that we would have had answers by now if this were the Alien franchise. There's one really harrowing scene. It's probably the best. I'm not going to say it's the best scene of the film, but it's a very good scene where, and not to give too much away, where the people are in the street slowly walking to a place where they've been told by the loudspeakers or by the megaphones of the people hollering from the helicopters, they need to all go to this place where they can be rescued. So there's this shot of scores of people walking down one of the avenues of Manhattan, and you can see the monsters just climbing on the building slowly, and the people are just shuffling, and you are just sitting in your seat waiting for that one person to fuck it all up. I'm not going to say what happens, but you can probably guess what happens. You've seen it in the trailer. But that shot reminded me of all those people just shuffling. I'm a Walking Dead fan, and it put me right in that headspace. It was just very haunting to see these people who aren't zombies walking so quietly and timidly and it was just a frightening, not frightening, but a tense, suspenseful scene that eventually got out of hand, and it was pretty badass. Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn make up the majority of this film. They carry the film. They are featured in it 2/3 of the movie because they go on this quest. Again, Frodo and Sam the cat with Eric. But they go on this quest, and when we first meet Eric, that's Joseph Quinn's character. He is kind of like a foppish Wall Street type of guy, but he grows as the story goes along. He evolves. He sticks his neck out on the line. He behaves courageously to assist his newfound friend Sam, Lupita's character. These two characters, or the actors, boy, given that they're acting with CGI characters alongside CGI characters, the monsters, I was sold with Joseph Quinn particularly that this dude was scared. He was terrified. It really comes across in Joseph Quinn's face. I don't really picture him as the Human Torch. He doesn't have the Human Torch looks that I grew up with, the blonde, pretty boy looks. But seeing him in this film being kind of a scared guy who but still puts it all on the line, if he can convince me when I see him play the Human Torch that he's also a braggadocious type of character, he can play that too, this is going to be an actor I'm going to really be interested in following his career. The only issues I really have with this movie is that it gets a little confusing about space and time. Just one example is at the beginning of the film, like I said, they're in a hospice center. Lupita's caretaker says, hey, we're going to go into the city to go see this puppet theater. When you say go into the city, that indicates to me that you are living outside of Manhattan. I lived in New York for 10 years. Going into the city means traveling through one of the tunnels or the bridges to get to the island of Manhattan. So I assume she's in New Jersey or in one of the outer boroughs. But at one point in the movie, there's a scene where Lupita and Eric go back to Lupita's apartment, which is in Manhattan. It's not that far from Harlem, as a matter of fact. So I was confused about that. It didn't make sense to me that she's in a hospital that's outside of the city, when I'm sure there are hospitals inside of Manhattan. So that didn't make sense to me. There's one scene where they are doing something and I remember, I'm not going to say what it is. Something's taking place in daylight, and then Eric has to go out and search for something. But when he goes outside, it's all of a sudden it's nighttime. That was confusing, unless it took him that long to find what he was looking for. But they don't really make that very clear. Typically, when you want to denote the passage of time, you would utilize a dissolve from shot to shot. This is just a straight cut. I'm not saying that you have to follow those rules, but it made it confusing for me. There was a lot of that happened a few times where I got lost in terms of where we were. At one moment, we're here and it's daytime. And then the very next shot, we're over here and it's nighttime. So that was a little confusing. The other real nitpick I have, and this doesn't necessarily apply to just this film, but the creature design of these things, it makes really no sense. The way they are designed, they have these huge front claws that go at an angle. They come out and then they go at an angle down, creating more weak points in their musculature, which doesn't make sense to me that they can move as fast as they do with this type of biology. That doesn't make sense to me. But I'll let that go. Other than that, I'm telling you guys, this was a pretty good movie. There was an equal amount of character development and character building as there was suspenseful scenes where the monsters were involved. There's one scene where they go into an office building, and it's pretty intense. And then they go down into a subway that's flooded. That's pretty intense. But, I just loved the balance between those moments of terror and action and suspense with moments where they really let these characters breathe. There's a scene that takes place in I want to say like a nightclub, I believe, or a bar. It goes on a little long, But you gotta appreciate what they're trying to do, which I did. And I really love that about this movie. It cared about its characters. So talking about characters, I'm gonna end this with that cat, Frodo. Everybody's talking about this cat. This cat probably deserves an Oscar nomination, and I'll tell you why. I have owned 3 cats since I graduated from college. I have a cat right now, so I know cats pretty well. This cat, whoever trained this cat, I don't know what they did to this cat. I don't know if they beat it. I don't know I don't know what techniques they use for this cat. But this cat, oh my God, it acts on cue. You have to suspend your disbelief that this cat can breathe underwater or hold its breath underwater. That this cat, like every cat I had, would be like, look, there's something attacking us. I'm out. Nice knowing you, master. I'm out of here. That's how every cat I've ever had acted. This cat, it would disappear and make sure everything was cool. And after everything was cool, it would come right back and jump right into Lupita's arms. It was interesting to find out that the cat, it was actually 2 cats that they used for filming. And what was also interesting that I read was that Lupita had to undergo some type of therapy or counseling to overcome a fear of cats. And she asked the director if it could be some other animal. And I forget what the response was, but clearly they did not go that route. They stuck with the cat. And I'm really glad they did. I don't know any cat that would act like this cat does, but it sure had 9 lives. And it knew exactly where to go, when to hide, when to get the hell out of there. And it was like, oh, okay, everything good? We good? Okay, let's keep going. I love the cat. I might go see this again just for the cat. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but I will say the ending of this movie is, see, if I give an adjective, you might denote what happens, but the ending is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. And it's a perfect way to end this movie. You may question why they made that choice. It seems like there were other options that could have taken place, but I'm not going to deride them for this. The way the movie ends, it's the colors are again saturated. Everything's beautiful. Everything looks normal. Everything's just quiet, but everything looks normal. There's one scene in here. There's one quick scene. Let me back up. I don't go to horror movies in theaters that often because I hate jump scares. And I think a lot of horror movies rely too much on jump scares. But I wanted to go see this movie because somebody, and you know who you are, told me that there are no jump scares in this movie. There are 2 that nearly had me shit my pants. And one of them took place in a scene where the colors in New York are vibrant and popping and just flavorful and all that. So I was like, oh, okay, everything must be okay. All right, everything's cool. And something happens that it took me a good 30 seconds to calm down. And it was the worst kind of jump scare. So at the end of the movie, when the cinematography is bright and there's a lot of colors and everything else, I can't say what happens, but I knew I was a little leery. I knew it wasn't going to be, I didn't think it was going to be a jump scare. Because it was clear it was near the end. But I still felt a little uneasy because everything seemed too normal. It was a great ending. And you go see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I hope you go see it and comment on it. So my rating, I'm bordering on 4 stars. I'm going to give it 3.5. I would say this is a movie that's worth going to see again if the opportunity arose. Like if my son wanted to go see it, yeah, let's go see it. But it is a good film. Lupita is still on top of her game. Joseph Quinn, I didn't realize until halfway into the movie that, oh, that's the guy playing the Human Torch. He just didn't come off as that type of character, a type of actor who could play the Human Torch because he's so vulnerable here. Just a great acting job all around. So I highly recommend it. 3.5 reels. Go see it. And if you like this video, please do me a favor. Click on subscribe. I want to get my viewership up. I want to get my subscriptions up. Only you can help me. Also, let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. That's the only way I'm going to get better, right? So leave comments below. That's the Martini. I will see you next time. Take care.